Again, very important to our country. Yvette Clarke from the Congressional Black Caucus, who is very much a part of all of this today, has the TPS piece of this. And I was so pleased to hear this morning the CAPAC, the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus, have Congresswoman Strickland of African American and Korean descent speak in terms of what this means to Asian Pacific American community, something that Chair Judy Chu reminds us of every day. So this is now gone beyond the Hispanic Caucus, the Black Caucus, the Asian Pacific Caucus, and to all of us in the Congress. This legislation is protecting Dreamers and TPS and DED recipients, honors the truth that immigrants are the constant reinvigoration of our country. When they come here with their hopes and dreams and aspirations, these parents bringing their children, their hopes and dreams and aspirations for a better future for their children, that courage, that determination, those aspirations are American traits, and they all make America more American with all of that. Indeed, they are true and legitimate heirs, these Dreamers are, of our founders. E pluribus unum, from many one. We talk about that all the time. Many in this chamber have been part of the fight to protect our patriotic Dreamers for years. As I said, when I stood here for 8 hours and 6 minutes, the longest speech and record in the House in history about the Dreamers, I was reading letters that my members were handing me, the story of the Dreamers. And as Mr. Stanton mentioned, there are teachers, there are professionals, there are CEOs, there are entrepreneurs. They contribute to our community in every way. And I was so pleased to hear him talk about that, because one of the first meetings I ever was to about Dreamers was under the leadership of one of his predecessors, well, not his, but the predecessor of some of our members from Arizona. That would be Congressman Pastor, Mr. Chairman Pastor. Mr. Grijalva, and Harry Mitchell, all three, had a meeting at Arizona State University about helping these young people. That was in 2007. So this has been going on for a while. Next month, as I mentioned, marks the 20th year since the DREAM Act was introduced by Congresswoman Roybal Allard, and it was on a bipartisan basis. Sadly, at the Senate, when we passed it 10 years ago, it was on a bipartisan basis. We couldn't prevail with 60 votes in the Senate. But since then, millions of Americans have come together to organize and mobilize for Dreamers, labor leaders, the business community, faith organizations, national security officials, law enforcement, and more. We often talk about Dreamers having the support of the 3 Bs. Badges in terms of law enforcement, Bible in terms of faith-based, and the business community. And the true VIPs of the moment are the Dreamers and immigrants who have spoken out with great dignity and eloquence, refusing to be forced back into the shadows. This determination has made a difference. It is their courage that is sending this legislation to the Senate and then to the President's desk. Before I close, I want to acknowledge the work of Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren, the chair of the Immigration Subcommittee of the Judiciary Committee. Zoe Lofgren is also the chair of the House Administration Committee, so I call her Madam Chairman, Madam Chairman. She has, Madam Chair. She has taught immigration law. She has been an immigration lawyer, and she chairs the Immigration Committee. We could not be better served than by her intricate knowledge of immigration law, both on this legislation, we'll take up next or later, the farm worker mobilization legislation. So I thank Zoe Lofgren for that. Again, Dreamers, TPS, DED recipients are American in every way. They have lived and worked in our country for decades, if not their entire lives, and they are an integral thread in the fabric of our nation. For the Dreamers, it's less time, for the others more. Dreamers power our businesses, our economy, our CEOs and taxpayers, all of them do. They advance innovation and America's technological edge as entrepreneurs and researchers. They protect our national security and military might and service members and civilian experts. That's why I'm so grateful to Congresswoman, Madam Chair Roybal Aller, Madam Chair Velasquez, Chair Judy Chu, and Congresswoman Strickland for advancing this legislation to help Dreamers, TPS, and DED recipients. So many of the front lines of the pandemic are frontline. There are frontline here. Healthcare workers, first responders, transportation, sanitation, food workers, our teachers. There's so much of our country. These immigrant communities strengthen, enrich, and ennoble our nation, and they must be allowed to stay. There's nothing partisan about protecting Dreamers, TPS, and DE recipients. The DREAM Act has long had bipartisan support in both chambers. Support for TPS and DE recipients is also bipartisan in the country. Nearly 3/4 of the public support a path to citizenship. I always love to quote President Reagan. In his last speech as President of the United States, his last speech, this is his last message as President to the American people, he said, "Thanks to each wave of new arrivals to this land of opportunity, we're a nation forever young, forever bursting with energy and new ideas, and always on the cutting edge, always leading the world into the next frontier. This quality is vital to the future, our future as a nation. If we ever close the door to new Americans, our leadership in the world would soon be lost." With that, I urge a bipartisan vote and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Ohio.
Madam Speaker, could I inquire the amount of time remaining for each side?
Gentleman from Ohio has 13 minutes. Gentleman from New York has 14 3/4 minutes.
We'll reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 45 seconds to the distinguished gentleman from New York, Mr. Jones.
Gentleman's recognized for 45 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I swear, sometimes I stand in this